waitress, keep your hands nice. See company and give orders, said Joe, who knew still less than Meg about culinary affairs. This obliging offer was gladly accepted, and Margaret retired to the parlour, which she hastily put in order by whisking, whisking the litter under the sofa, and shutting the blinds, to see the trouble of dusting Jo, with perfect faith in her own powers, and a friendly desire to make up the quarrel, immediately put a note in the office, inviting Laurie or to dinner. You'd be you'd better see what you have got before you think about having company, said Meg, when informed of the hospitable but rash act. Oh, there is corned beef and plenty of potatoes, and I shall get some asparagus and a lobster for a relish. For a relish, as Hannah says, we'll have lettuce and make a salad. I don't know how, but the book tells. I'll have blanc, okay, blancmange, 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 and strawberries for dessert, and coffee too, if you want to be elegant. Don't try too many messes, Joe, for you can't make anything but gingerbread and molasses. Okay, and molasses candy, um, fit to eat. I wash my hands of the dinner party, and since you have asked Laurie on your own responsibility, you may just take care of him. I don't want you to do anything but be civil to him and help with the pudding. You'll give me your advice if I get in a muddle, won't you? Asked Joe, rather hurt. Yes, but I don't know much, except about bread and a few trifles. You had better ask mother's leave before you order anything, returned Meg prudently. Mm-hmm. Of course I shall. I'm not a fool. And Jo went off in a huff at the doubts expressed of her powers. Get what you like, and don't disturb me. I'm going out to dinner and can't worry about things at home, said Mrs. March when Jo spoke to her. I never enjoyed housekeeping, and I'm going to take a vacation today and read and write, go visiting and amuse myself. The unusual spectacle of her busy mother rocking comfortably and reading early in the morning made Jo feel as if some natural phenomenon had occurred, for an eclipse, an earthquake, or a volcanic eruption would hardly have seemed stranger. Everything is out of sorts somehow, she said to herself, going downstairs. There's Beth crying. That's a sure sign that something is wrong with his family. If Amy is bothering, I'll shake her. Feeling very much out of sorts herself, Jo hurried into the parlour to find Beth sobbing over Pip, the canary, who lay dead in the cage with his little claws pathetically extended, as if imploring the food for want of which he had died. It is all my fault. I forgot him. There isn't a seed or a drop left. Oh, Pip, oh, Pip, how could I be so cruel to you? Cried Beth, taking the poor thing in her hands and trying to restore him. Jo peeped into his half-open eye, felt his little heart, and finding him stiff and cold, shook her head and offered her domino box for a coffin. Put him in the oven and maybe we'll get warm and revive, said Amy hopefully. He's been starved, and he shan't be baked. Now he's dead. I'll make him a shroud, and he shall be brood in the garden, and I'll never have another bird. Never, my Pip, for I'm too bad to own one, murmured Beth, sitting on the floor with her pet folded in her hands. The funeral shall be in this afternoon, and we will all go. Now, don't cry, Bethy. It is a pity, but nothing goes right this week, and Pip has had the worst of the experiment. Make the shroud and lay him in my box, and after the dinner party we'll have a nice little funeral, said Jo, beginning to feel as if she had undertaken a good deal. Leaving the others to console Beth, she departed to the kitchen, which was in a most discouraging state of confusion. Putting on a big apron, she fell to work and got the dishes piled up ready for washing when she discovered that the fire was out. Let me Here's a sweet prospect, muttered Jo, slamming the stove door open and poking vigorously among the cinders. Having rekindled the fire, she thought she would go to market while the water heated. The walk revived her spirits, and flattering herself that she had made good bargains, she trudged home again after buying a very young lobster, some very old asparagus, and 2 boxes of acid strawberries. By the time she got cleared up, the dinner arrived, and the stove was red hot. Hannah had left a pan of bread to rise. Meg had worked it up early, set it set it on the hearth for a second, rising and forgetting it. Meg was entertaining Sally Gardiner in the parlour, and when the door flew open and a floury, crocky, flushed, and dishevelled figure appeared demandingly, tartly. I say, isn't bread enough when it runs over the pans? Sally began to laugh, but Meg nodded and lifted her eyebrows as high as they would go, which caused the apparition and to vanish and put the sour bread into the oven without further delay. Mrs. March went out, after peeping here and there to see how matters went, also saying a word of comfort to Beth, who sat making a winding sheet while the dear departed lay in state in the domino box. A strange sense of helplessness fell upon the girls as the grey bonnet vanished around the corner, and despair seized them when a few minutes later Miss Crocker appeared and said she'd come to dinner. Now, this lady was a thin, yellow spinster with a sharp nose and inquisitive eyes, who saw everything and gossiped about all she saw. They disliked her. They disliked her, but had been taught to simply because she was old and poor and had few friends. Meg gave her the easy chair and tried to entertain her while she asked questions, criticized everything, and told stories of the people who she knew. Language cannot describe the anxieties, experiences, and exertions which Joe underwent that morning, and the dinner she served up became a standing joke. Fearing to ask any more advice, she did her best alone and discovered that something more than energy and goodwill is necessary to make a cook. She boiled the asparagus for an hour and was grieved to find the heads cooked off and the stalks harder than ever. The bread burned black, for the salad dressing to aggravitate, aggrav, aggravated, hmm, aggravated her that she let everything else go till she had convinced herself that she could not make it fit to eat. The lobster was a scarlet mystery to her, but she hammered and picked till it was unshelled and its meagre proportions concealed in a grove of lettuce leaves. The potatoes had to be hurried not to keep the asparagus waiting, and were not done at last. The blanc, the blancmange, I don't know how to pronounce this word again, was lumpy, and the strawberries not as ripe as they looked, having been skilfully deconed. Well, they can eat beef and bread and butter if they are hungry, only it is mortifying to have to spend your whole morning for nothing, thought Joe, as she rang the bell half an hour later than usual, and suited, hot, tired, and dispirited, serving feast spread for Laurie, accustomed to all sorts of elegance, and Miss Crocker, whose curious eyes would mark all failures, and whose tattling tongue would report them far and wide. Poor Joe would gladly have gone under the table, as one thing after another was tasted and left. While Amy giggled, Meg looked distressed, Miss Crocker pursed up her lips, and Laurie talked and laughed with all his might to give a cheerful tone to the festive scene. Joe's one strong point was the fruit, for she had sugared it well, and had a pitcher of rich cream to eat with it. Her hot cheeks cooled a trifle, and she drew a long breath as the pretty glass plates went around, and everyone looked graciously at the little rosy islands floating in a sea of cream. Miss Croker tasted first, made a worry face, and drank some water hastily. Joe had Joe had refused, thinking there might not be enough, for they dwindled sadly after the picking. Oh wow. The picking over. Glanced at Laurie, but he was eating away manfully, though there was a slight pucker about his mouth, and he kept his eye fixed on his plate. Amy, who was fond of delicate fare, took a heaping spoonful, choked, hid her face in her napkin, and left the table precipitately. What a word. "Oh, what is it?" exclaimed Joe, trembling. "Salt instead of sugar, and the cream is sour," replied Meg, with a tragic gesture. Joe uttered a groan and fell back in her chair, remembering that she had given a last hasty powdering to the berries out of one of the two boxes on the kitchen table, and had neglected to put the milk in the refrigerator. She turned scarlet and was on the verge of crying when she met Laurie's eyes, which would look merry in spite of his heroic efforts. The comical side of the affair suddenly struck her, and she laughed till the tears ran down her cheeks. So did everyone else, even Crocker, as the girls called the old lady, and the unfortunate dinner ended gaily, with bread and butter, olives, and fun. I haven't strength of mind enough to clear up now, so we will sober ourselves with a funeral, said Joe, as they rose and Miss Crocker made ready to go, being eager to tell the new story at another friend's dinner table. They did sober themselves for Beth's sake. Laurie dug a grave under the ferns in the grove. Little Pep was laid in with many tears by his tender-hearted mistress and covered with moss. A wreath of violets and chickweed was hung on the stone which bore his epitaph. Epitaph composed by Joe while she struggled with the dinner. Here lies Pip March, who died the 7th of June, loved and lamented sore, and not forgotten soon. At the conclusion of the ceremonies, Beth retired to her room, overcome with emotion and love stir, but there was no place of repose, for the beds were not made, and she found her grief much assuaged, I think, don't know, by beating up pillows and putting things in order. Meg helped Joe clear away the remains of the feast, which took half the afternoon, and left them so tired that they agreed to be contented with tea and toast for supper. Laurie took Amy for a drive, which was a deed of charity, for the sour cream seemed to have had a bad effect upon her temper. Miss March came home to find the three older girls hard at work in the middle of the afternoon, and a glance at the closet gave her an idea of the success of one part of the experiment. Before the housewives could rest, several people called, and there was a scramble to get ready to see them. Then tea must be got, errands done, and one or two necessary bits of sewing neglected till the last minute. As twilight fell, dewy and still, one by one they gathered in the porch where the June roses were budding beautifully, and each groaned or sighed as she sat down, as if tired or troubled. What a dreadful day this has been, began Joe, usually the first to speak. It has seemed shorter than usual, but so uncomfortable, said Meg. Not a bit like home, added Amy.